Good morning. This is video number 6 of my set of 31 videos trying to share with people how to use a glucose meter as a fuel gauge. Even though this is video number 6, today is day 5 of the 30-day data-driven fasting challenge that I am trying to do videos to provide for people who are learning this process of data-driven fasting, which is how to use a glucose meter as your fuel gauge. I'll put the chart up for you to see all 30 days, kind of as a map of here's where we are and here's where we're going. On day 5, we're in the beginning stages of hunger training, learning how to identify our hunger and correlate it with our glucose value. I've already done my morning fasting glucose in the kitchen before I got my coffee. And this morning it was 86. Let me think, what were my morning fasting numbers the other days? I just looked back in the record. So yesterday I recorded an 85, and the morning before that I recorded an 82. Today's is 86. What I'm interpreting from that, since I did not eat late yesterday, is that my body is liberating some stored glycogen and turning it into glucose and using up some of that, which makes me happy. I can't imagine it's anything different than using up the stored glycogen, turning it back into glucose, because I didn't overeat yesterday and I didn't eat late, and those would be the only reasons for those would not be the only reasons for an elevated glucose. One of the things that you might see as you progress during these 30 days is stress can raise your glucose. Illness can raise your glucose. I have had times when I had a cold or a virus, and even without eating, even fasting for 24 hours, my glucose continued to go up. So the body, during times of stress and illness, it will convert stored glycogen into glucose, because that's what the body wants to use for fuel. Typically, we can use fat, ketones, but it prefers using glucose. That's the easy fuel for it to work off from. So now that we all have our hunger trigger, the goal is to try to get as close to that number as possible. That doesn't mean going hungry, though. If we're hungry, what we would do is to try to make sure we focus on nutrients and protein, but pull back on the two energy sources of fats or carbs. If you're in the TrimHealthyMama world, that plan or that idea of fueling is called fuel pulling. Prioritizing protein and using non-starchy veggies is how they say it. Oh, and the protein that you prioritize would be lean proteins, because you're pulling back on fats. So instead of using a chicken thigh or leg that has fat in the darker meat, you would use the white meat of the chicken, the breast or the tenderloin pieces. Instead of having whole eggs scrambled up for breakfast, you might scramble up egg whites and use some nutritional yeast to flavor it a little bit. Use a tiny bit of Parmesan cheese and even the smallest sprinkling of turmeric if the pale eggs are a turn-off to you. So that would be a way to have the protein from the eggs, but pulling back on the fats. Though I learned an interesting thing this last year. There's protein in the yolk too, but there's also fat in the yolk. So we are chasing our trigger. My trigger's 80, and that means that today, when I get hungry, I will test and see how close I am to 80. And the Data-Driven Fasting app helps guide you as well. When you test, it'll pop up messages to you to let you know if you're really hungry and you're not at trigger. Prioritize protein and nutrients. Prioritize lean proteins and non-starchy veggies. I'm going to look at my Data-Driven Fasting app on the dashboard, and I'm looking under that to-do section here, and there's this information about hunger training. So I'm going to click on read more, and I won't read this all out loud to you because it's accessible to you even if you're using the free part of Data-Driven Fasting, because you have 14 days to try out the app without having to pay for anything, without having to enter a credit card. So free or otherwise, free or paid, you have access to read the information on day 5 under hunger training and get some guidance from that. That's what the app is for, to give you guidance. So I'm going to cut off the video now and come back later, but I wanted to start off day 5 with a little bit of information about the goal for today in hunger training. It's near the end of the day now, and the day went mostly as I expected. We were out and about, and so I knew we were going to be eating out today. I got hungry around the time that we were out and it was time for lunch, and we were in Whole Foods. So we went through the store getting some things we needed to for the house, for groceries, but we also decided to pick out what we each wanted for lunch. I wanted to have some special indulgences, but to start with, I wanted to buffer all of that by getting in a bunch of veggies. So I picked out a bag of red sweet peppers, knowing that I'd eat one there at the store in the dining area or the cafe area. Then I would certainly be using the rest of them in the days to come here at the house. I basically try to start every meal with some veggies, especially raw veggies, to slow myself down a little bit. I can eat quite a lot, and if I don't use the veggies to fill up with, then what I'm eating a lot of could end up being very high calorie. Now, I don't count calories, but calories do matter. They do count. I started my meal with the red pepper, and while I was going through the grocery store, I found some ready-to-eat pickled beets. So those were next on my schedule of things to fill up on. Great nutritious things. The red pepper and the beets, excellent thing to start with. And the vinegar is beneficial too. I'll put some information in the description box about why vinegar is helpful in one's dietary life. Helpful with glucose. It has been cold and rainy here, so I decided some hot soup sounded good, and I looked at all the offerings there, and I chose a vegetable lentil soup, just one of the small containers of that. So that was next up. While I was eating these things, it took time because there's a lot of chewing involved, and then I realized that I couldn't hold everybody up by sitting there eating my whole meal. So I decided to eat the cold grilled salmon next, and then whatever was left over, I would just take in the car with me and continue eating on the way home. I told my daughter that since I usually put all my food into one meal a day, it often takes me an hour, sometimes up to 2 hours, to sit and eat my meal and enjoy my meal. They weren't up for sitting in Whole Foods for even an hour, which I don't blame them. I went to get my phone to remind myself of what was there. So when we got in the car, I had eaten the lentil soup and the the salmon, but I still had the corn, the roasted corn salad. I think it's called elote. I'm not sure, but I ate that, and then the wheat berry salad had appealed to me, but when I started tucking into it, it wasn't all that great. So I probably only ate not even a quarter of it and kind of put it aside. Now, what is not shown in my picture that I had on my phone here a second ago is I had chosen 2 cookies from the bakery section, and those were the things that I was really looking forward to. But first I wanted to eat all of that other stuff to make sure I got in good protein, make sure I took in a bunch of nutrition through the raw veggies, and I wanted to blunt the whole blood glucose rise situation by all the fiber that was in everything I'd eaten before the cookies. So when we got home and I was ready to take my afternoon nap, which I sometimes do, I enjoyed 2 wonderful cookies. Chocolate, crunchy, whatever they were excellent. And I probably could have eaten 6 of them, but I bought 2 because it was reasonable, and I stuck with what was reasonable. I'm not always reasonable. I don't know if I mentioned that I did take my glucose before I started to eat, and it was at 81, which is really close to my hunger trigger of 80. So the app gave me a message, you know, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Let me look at what that message says. It tells me, congratulations, your blood glucose is close enough to your personal trigger. Time to eat a nutritious meal. I know from experience that if I'd been much below my trigger, it probably would have told me to go ahead and eat some carbohydrates. If I'd been above my trigger at that time and I indicated that I was going to eat, it would have told me to prioritize protein and nutrients, but something to the effect of don't add in the fuels of carbs and fats, which I think is interesting how close this is to TrimHealthyMama in philosophy. So for those of you who are finding that it's taking you a while to get to your personal hunger trigger, since we should all have one now on day 5 here, that's when, if you're TrimHealthyMama, you'll use a fuel pull meal. I do encourage you, though, to use more than the 20 grams of protein that is recommended, especially if you're only having 2 meals a day, because if you stick to 20 grams, that means you're only getting 40 grams of protein in the whole day. I will put up a couple images of what fuel pull guidelines look like. There are 2 pages that I know you won't be able to read clearly on the video, but the pages are there so you can see what they look like, and there will be a link in the description box where you can go and find those pages on the TrimHealthyMama main website, the business website. You should be able to find those pages there. And I'll put my meal synopsis guidelines for the fuel pull meal in this video's description box. I put all of the meal guidelines in yesterday's video number 5 of the set of 31, and today video number 6 I'll just do the fuel pull guidelines for you. I needed to get a drink. So I'm going to wrap the video up now. It's been a good day. I had plenty of fuel, probably maybe even more fuel than I needed when you consider the cookies that I finished my meal with. But so be it. And if I get hungry before I go to bed tonight, my game plan is to either drink something like a fat stripping frappa, which is a TrimHealthyMama chocolate shake, or I will maybe have the protein-sparing snickerdoodle pudding, that I have some of that in the fridge waiting for me. So I don't need to add any more fuel in. I know that because there was fuel in the lentil vegetable soup. There was fuel in the corn salad. There was fuel in the wheatberry salad, even though I only ate a little bit of it. Definitely fuel in the cookies. Not necessarily nutrition. Nutrition and fuel are two different things. They can go hand in hand, but they can definitely be separated too. A bag of Cheetos is full of fuel. It is very devoid of nutrition. So I have a game plan if I get hungry, but I don't expect that I will. I will just get up tomorrow and fast for the rest of today. Hopefully get a good night's sleep. Get up tomorrow, and when I get hungry, I will test my glucose and see where it's at. I'll also test my morning fasting glucose, because that's what tells me where I'm metabolically at, or how things are going from day to day as my body is working through possibly offloading some stored fuel. So that's a wrap on video number 6 of my set of 31 videos, and today is day 5 of data-driven fasting. Thank you for watching, and I hope that these videos might be helpful to someone, even one person. Good day.